Good morning. My name is Andrew Kemp, and today I'll be presenting on the topic of cultural differences in international trade. This presentation is part of my Principles of Procurement class, where we explore how cultural factors impact procurement practices across different countries. In this presentation, I'll focus specifically on the cultural differences between the United States and China, highlighting how these differences can influence procurement transactions and business relationships. In this slide, I'll explain why I chose China for this assignment. China is the second largest economy in the world, with a GDP of approximately $17.9 trillion in 2022. It's also one of the United States' largest trading partners, with over $690 billion in total trade in 2022. Many U.S. businesses, especially in industries like electronics and manufacturing, rely heavily on imports from China. For example, more than 40% of U.S. consumer electronics come from China. Understanding China's cultural practices is essential for effective procurement and long-term business success. Now let's move on to some of the key cultural practices in China. First, China has a high power distance, meaning there is a clear hierarchical structure in both society and business. Employees and subordinates tend to follow authority without questioning it. In terms of communication, collectivism is highly valued, meaning the group's success is more important than individual goals. This contrasts with more individualistic cultures like the US. Another key concept is the importance of harmony and face. Maintaining harmony in relationships is essential, and avoiding public embarrassment or conflict is crucial for maintaining face. Lastly, China follows a more polychronic approach to time, meaning personal relationships may take precedence over strict schedules in business. Now let's look at the cultural practices in the United States. The US has a lower power distance, meaning there is less emphasis on hierarchy in business, and employees often feel comfortable voicing their opinions. The US is also highly individualistic, where personal achievement is seen as more important than group success. This is reflected in business, where innovation and individual responsibility are often emphasized. Additionally, Americans value direct communication. In business, being clear and straightforward is the norm, even if it means being confrontational at times. Finally, the US is monochronic when it comes to time. Schedules and punctuality are very important, and deadlines are usually strictly followed. In this slide, I'll focus on the key differences between cultural practices in China and the United States. First, when it comes to power distance, China has a high power distance culture with strict hierarchies and top-down decision-making. In contrast, the US has a low power distance, where employees are encouraged to voice their opinions, and decision-making is often more collaborative. Another major difference is between collectivism and individualism. China's collectivist culture emphasizes the success of the group over individual achievements. Meanwhile, the US is highly individualistic, with a focus on personal success, responsibility, and innovation. When we look at communication styles, we see that China values indirect communication. Maintaining harmony and saving face is crucial, so open disagreement is often avoided. In the US, however, communication tends to be more direct, and assertiveness is accepted, even in business contexts. Finally, there's a clear difference in how the two cultures view time. China's approach is more polychronic, meaning there's flexibility around deadlines, with relationships taking priority over schedules. The US, on the other hand, follows a monochronic approach, where sticking to a schedule and meeting deadlines are critical to doing business. This slide explains how researching a country's culture before conducting procurement transactions can benefit both you and the business. First, it allows for improved communication. In China, for example, indirect communication and the concept of saving face are important, so understanding these nuances helps avoid misunderstandings or unintentional offense. Second, cultural awareness helps build stronger relationships, which is key in countries like China, where trust and long-term partnerships are highly valued. By showing respect for their culture, you create a solid foundation for working together. Next, cultural research allows you to adjust your negotiation strategy. In the US, a direct approach might work, but in China, negotiation often requires patience and a focus on compromise and maintaining harmony. Adapting to these norms can lead to better procurement outcomes. Additionally, cultural missteps can be costly. Failing to understand how business hierarchy works in China, for instance, could lead to delays or even lost deals if the right decision makers aren't approached properly. Finally, showing cultural understanding enhances your trust and credibility with suppliers. It demonstrates professionalism and respect, which can establish you as a reliable and informed partner. To wrap up this presentation, I'd like to summarize the key learnings from this research project. First, I've learned that cultural awareness is critical for successful procurement transactions. Every culture has its unique approach to communication, decision-making, and relationship building, and failing to recognize these differences can lead to misunderstandings. Next, I've seen that adapting to these cultural norms can lead to better outcomes. In China, respecting hierarchy and indirect communication fosters trust, while in the US, being direct and focusing on individual responsibility is effective. Flexibility and respect for different values are key to building successful business relationships. Additionally, I've learned that trust and relationships are essential in procurement. In China, for example, strong relationships can be just as important as formal contracts. Trust building requires a solid understanding of the cultural landscape you're working in. Finally, this research has reinforced that cultural research is an investment. Taking the time to study and understand a culture before entering into procurement deals pays off. It enhances credibility, shows respect, and ultimately leads to smoother negotiations and stronger partnerships.